The deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis appear to have marked a turning point, galvanizing local elected leaders to try to fortify their cities against Donald Trump's aggressive ICE operations. In the past 2 weeks, mayors in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Oakland, Seattle, Boston have all signed executive orders attempting to restrict how and where ICE agents can operate within their cities. According to the Washington Post, these policies broadly seek to restrict federal agents from city property and parks, and in some cases, these orders even direct local police departments to monitor federal immigration activity. Cities and counties across the country have also started to create what are known as ICE-free zones as a way to prevent or at least deter unauthorized federal immigration actions on government-owned property and in sensitive public spaces. The goal is to ensure that residents feel more comfortable visiting hospitals, courthouses, libraries, public parks, and other community spaces without the fear of ICE looming over them. Still, there are limits. While local officials have the power to regulate how government-owned spaces are used, restricting federal agents from areas open to the public can be difficult in practice. And ICE-free zones do not and legally cannot prevent agents from making arrests if they have a valid judicial warrant, which they do in some cases. Another way cities are fighting back is within the legal system. In coordination with elected Democratic officials, about a dozen local prosecutors in Philadelphia, Austin, Dallas, Tucson, as well as Fairfax and Arlington counties in Virginia, have pledged to prosecute federal agents under local law if they commit crimes while carrying out their duties. This effort is led by the Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner, who told the Washington Post, quote, "Appeasers fail and people fight back when they are up against an enemy of this nature." Larry Krasner, the District Attorney of Philadelphia, joins me now. Larry, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Ali. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Let's talk about this, because when these federal agents killed two people in Minneapolis, Minneapolis and Minnesota officials came up against a wall of jurisdictional issues with the feds saying, you're not involved in this, you're not investigating this, and you can't even touch the evidence. Now, they fought back, and they have tried to, but how do you deal with the feds saying this is not your purview?
Well, you follow the law. You know, my friend and colleague, Mary Moriarty, who is the district attorney, state's attorney, but same thing, in Minneapolis, is someone who is not going to back down. She is not going to be an appeaser. And what they were saying was mostly a lie. When J.D. Vance said there is absolute immunity for federal officials, that is a complete lie.
Yeah, I want to remind you, he said this before any evidence was out, before anything had developed. This was the same course of events in which Kristi Noem called people terrorists and things like that, and Donald Trump said they're violent people. No one had investigated a thing at that point.
Right. Well, you know, facts are not their friends. Fascism does not like facts. That's how it's really always been. So it was a wall of lies, not only about the facts, but about the law. Here is the law. The law is that a state prosecutor, when the federal officials are failing to do what their jobs are all about and what the law requires, we can bring charges. We can prosecute those charges. Those charges will be prosecuted either in state or federal court, but we're the ones who keep them. So you don't have an assistant U.S. attorney deliberately tanking the case to lose because Donald Trump told him to do so. And if we get a conviction, we have a superpower that federal prosecutors don't have. That superpower is that Donald Trump is unable to pardon anyone with a state court conviction. If you're not sure about that, ask Derek Chauvin. He is sitting in custody right now because of a state conviction. If you doubt it, ask Donald Trump, who will never be pardoned for his 34 criminal convictions in state court in Manhattan. So there are a few more details there, but we have to do our job. When the feds don't, you know, when I think about it, I think back to the 60s and the struggle for black civil rights in the South. That was a time when we always counted on the feds to deal with the Southern sheriffs who wouldn't follow the law. The problem now is the Southern sheriffs in the White House. And so the state has to pick up that job.
So let me ask you this. A federal agent shoots somebody on a street. What's the distinction? How do we determine who gets to investigate or prosecute that?
Well, both of them get to investigate or prosecute it. But of course, we know that the feds will do everything in their power not to do it. They are unable in almost every state. The feds are unable to stop the local prosecution from proceeding. That is exactly what Mary Moriarty is trying to do right now, because she has the guts to do it in Minneapolis. It is a slightly cumbersome process because in order to gather all the evidence, you want cooperation We are not going to get it from the feds, it appears. So then you have to write a bunch of what are known as TUI letters to federal agencies saying, give me the stuff. And they can play games with that. But here's the bottom line. Even if someone like Mary Moriarty gets completely shut out on getting the rest of the information, the rest of the evidence, but she's tried to get it, we can go ahead with the evidence we have. And this whole country has seen the videos of what happened to Alex Preddy. They've seen what happened to Renee Nicole Good. They know quite a bit about it. If you are forced to try that case, let me just say this. Years and years ago, I was a defense attorney before I became the prosecutor in Philly, and it's now been 8 years in this job. I would not want to be a defense attorney for the people who killed Preddy and Good. I would not want to be explaining that somehow all of that stuff with a mask and a gun was necessary.
What do you do? What are you hearing about Philadelphia? I know that Wired is reporting that ICE is planning to move into the Philly suburb of Berwyn. What's your sense of how this interaction is going to look in your area?
You know, the problem with this administration is almost nothing they say is what they actually do. You know, I mean, we're all well aware that there are threats left and right and center, and we don't know what they're going to do. I know Berwyn, Pennsylvania rather well. I actually went to Conestoga High School, which is pretty close to there. I was not aware that it was some massive hotbed of, you know, illegal immigration. In fact, I think it was mostly in my day a bunch of Republicans rolling around in town and country, you know, station wagons. So I really, you know, nothing here is really registering. And I think we just have to wait and see what these crazy people do.
Larry, good to see you. Thank you for joining us again. As always, Larry Krasner is the district attorney of Philadelphia.